What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I did want to make a video today going over the map here in Motorfest. Now I did make a video when the game was actually coming out, basically saying the smaller map is better. And to be honest, I would still go by that in a few ways, but I have to admit, in some places I'm going to have to say that is indeed wrong. Now we do know in the Crew 2 that map is way bigger because, it's a redesigned version of the United States. So it's obviously going to be much bigger than a small island here in, Hawaii. But do not worry, guys, because I do believe they are most likely going to add other parts to it. Like, for example, you can't see that part of the island there. And I would say they basically have to add it for a few reasons. Now, the first thing I do want to mention, though, is yes, the map is smaller, but there is going to be more positives to it. And I do feel like a lot of players are probably going to go, this map is kind of boring block. Like, I kind of wish they would have just, like, upgraded the Crew 2 map or something and added it. Here's the issue with that, though. With the Motorfest map, they can focus on better physics, also a lot more details, and of course the cars are going to be much better than they were before. Not only with, like, the overall driving physics, but the way they look, the way they sound. Having the map being that big, they're obviously going to have some obstacles. Some of the cars are probably going to have a similar sound to them, or, some of the vehicles probably won't have the best handling aspects in them. So I would say having like a smaller map is better for this. Now the biggest thing I find here, guys, is the issue here is, well, having a smaller map, yes, you obviously get more detail, but you know what the problem is? The map is going to be smaller, which in return does mean there is not going to be as many events or skills in the entire map that you actually can complete, which in return is also going to make there be less events in the summits or even PvP events. Now don't get me wrong here, I would say a lot of players are going to go, well, like, the summits need like an overhaul anyway and like, probably add more events, but here's the thing. There is only so many events and skills you can actually do in the map, so like, that is going to be a big reason why you most likely see a lot of the skills overlapping. Like, to be honest, guys, seeing the exact same two escapes or, like, seeing another slalom you just did the week before probably is going to make players go, wait a second, didn't we just do this skill last week? Which is funny because we've actually went through that a few times already in the summits. Don't get me wrong, guys, like, I'm not hating on it, but I would say having less events in the future probably is going to be a bit of a problem. Like, looking at the Crew 2 right now, you can obviously tell how big the map is. Like, there is going to be events legit everywhere. Now, don't get me wrong, I do know the game is 5 years old, so there is going to be a lot more content on this game because of, updates around 5 years being into it. Whereas Motorfest has been out barely 4 months, so I kind of can't hate on that. Like, they will probably add more events into, like, the other map, or, like, adding something like a map expansion is not only going to give more players a different place to actually go explore, but on top of that, it's also going to be all kinds of new events and skills that can be in summits, or, like, even hopefully showing up in, PvP, because my goodness, currently we only have, like, set events in PvP. We really need more of it. Let us do the playlists in them. That would be kind of cool. That probably is the crazy part to me, though, is I do feel like they were aiming at, like, a smaller map. That way they could probably focus on different things like driving physics or, like, more detail in the map as well, because we can agree that the Crew 2 looked a bit dull in some areas. And the thing about that, though, is you can't get mad at trees not loading in or, like, rocks floating. The map is so big that there is going to be issues here and there. So I guess you really can't get mad at stuff like that. But for Motorfest, can we all agree, though, that the biggest thing is having more events and stuff like that in the map? To be honest, guys, I'm not really that upset the map is smaller. In fact, I actually really enjoy it. I do have fun driving around Oahu. Like, I love the map's atmosphere. And I would say a lot of players are also big fans of it. On top of that, though, the cars sound so much better in this game than the Crew 2. So I guess in some ways, though, there really is going to be positives and negatives to both sides of it. Like, looking at the Motorfest map and then going back to the Crew 2 map, you can probably see some things being better done in, like, both places there. The big question here, guys, is what are your overall thoughts on the map in Motorfest? Would you prefer, like, the map to be bigger, which I would say is probably fairly obvious? But I do think for me, though, the biggest thing here is probably going to come down to at least having more events and skills. That way, like, it will translate to the summits. And then you'll have more events and also more things to do instead of, like, the exact same ones over and over. But besides all that, though, guys, I would like to know your thoughts on the map in Motorfest. Like, what do you think some of the main changes actually should be? Now, don't get me wrong. I would say the number one thing said is probably, like, add a big map to it, or, like, add a map expansion. I really can't argue that because we can all agree that it does need it. And I really do think the biggest issue with it, though, is the lack of events, or at least having more of them. And on top of that, it is really going to help summits and PvP. So, like, it really is going to be a win-win either way. But regardless, though, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. And overall, do you think we're getting a map expansion this year, or is it going to be later?